Hey everybody, it's Dave and Olive. Thanks for joining us here at Book Blather. Today we're going to be showing you a wide assortment of books because we went to another used book fair. Okay, so we did a video a little while back about when we went to a very large used book fair called the Pequot Library Book Fair in Southport, Connecticut. It's a massive book fair in New England that we go to every year. The Pequot Library also holds a much smaller winter fair. And this one is unlike the other one, which had all sorts of tents and everything. This one is just in one room in the auditorium of the main building. Now we're walking up to the main building, and as you can see, this looks very different because there are no massive tents outside. There's no signs up top listing where you can find all the different categories of books. This one is all held in one room. I didn't get a ton of footage here, but as you can see, this is it. They do have it broken up into different categories on the different tables, but it's a limited selection of books, but it's still, you know, they still have a good selection of things to go through. And we don't always go to this one because honestly, it's a lot smaller, and we usually don't even realize when it's happening. But we have been to it before, and we did notice it this year, so we took a quick stop over. So the thing I love about book fairs is I'm not going there looking for anything specific, so I end up coming home with like a wide assortment of things. And that happened at this fair. We got a range of different things, some of the type of things we would normally read, and some things that are not the types of stuff that we would normally be looking for. So, but of all the stuff that we got, probably the thing we were most excited about is a Bible, which is ironic because we're not religious, like, at all. But I do like religious things, churches, religious stories, religious texts. And so this totally caught my eye. So this is called the Pictorial Family Bible. The best I can tell, it's a little over 100 years old. And as you can see on the outside, the front is a little more worn, but the back you can see a little better. It has this, nice texture and illustrations on the front, but the inside just has some incredible illustrations. I'll have to put this down to show it to you a little bit better. So, yeah, as you can see, there are just these beautiful illustrations that are just interwoven with the text as you're reading along. And they're just, as you can see, these are not just, any ordinary drawings. I mean, these are just really beautiful, detailed illustrations. And this seems like this must have been quite some effort to include this amount of detailed illustration throughout this thing, along with all this text. And it just goes on, and it's really beautiful, having all of this just interwoven throughout the text of the stories. Now we got other books, of course, and like I said, wide variety of stuff. One of those is Shakespeare's Pub by Pete Brown. So this was published in 2012 by St. Martin's Press. This is, as the cover says, a barstool history of London as seen through the windows of its oldest pub, the George Inn. So the George Inn is a pub in London. It's still there, and it's been there for hundreds of years. Apparently, everybody has all sorts of famous literary individuals have been there. Everyone from Shakespeare to Dickens to Chaucer, and this basically tells the history of London over the course of 6 centuries. Through the windows of this inn, which has changed over time, but has, of course, been used for many different purposes and been visited by many different characters. And you kind of see what's going on in the news over the course of time, and jumps around back and forth at different time periods. So I'm not going to read this right now, but I did read the first chapter just to get an idea for it, and it does look pretty interesting. But it looked like a really unique book, a nice mesh of literature, history, and booze. So we picked it up, and we're definitely going to read the rest of this book, probably not too far in the future. Okay, so the next book that we picked up is Hot Milk by Deborah Levy. This was published in 2016 by Bloomsbury. It's a UK publication. I picked this up because I had read another book called Swimming Home that about 2 years ago that I had been turned on to by Simon over at SavidgeReads. And if you described it to me, that wasn't the type of book I would have normally thought I'd be interested in. But I picked it up because Simon had been talking about it and it had been shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize. So it's one of those books that now occasionally I think back to it, and I'm not even really sure why. So I wanted to try something else by Deborah Levy, and I saw this at the fair, and this one looked interesting, so I grabbed it. This one is about a woman who's caring for her ailing older mother, and she goes to see a specialist in, I think, Spain. And this doctor has some very apparently unconventional medical practices. And so as the illness continues and the doctor's methods get a little more bizarre, then I think the woman ends up spiraling into, some sort of adventurous, seductive, complex experiences of her own as this goes on. So it sounded a little mysterious and interesting. So, like we said, since we wanted to read something else by Deborah Levy, we picked this one up. Okay, another one we picked up is The Demonologist by Andrew Pyper. This was published around 2013, I think, by Simon Schuster. And this is about a man that gets a visit. He is a expert in demonic literature and is particularly an expert in Paradise Lost. And he gets a visit from a strange woman that asks him to come view a particular event. And he declines, but she leaves plane tickets for him anyway. And when he goes home, he's informed by his wife that she's leaving him. So with his life suddenly up in the air, he grabs his daughter and they go off to go see this thing that this strange woman had wanted him to check out. And I think when they get there, they encounter this old man sitting alone in a room that starts like talking in the voice of his father. And then he goes back to his hotel room, I think, and he sees his daughter, and she makes a comment about "come find me," and then before she leaps off the roof. And that then catapults him into this adventure where he's using particular Paradise Lost clues along the way to try to track down this demon that has basically captured his daughter. And basically makes this kind of transition throughout the story, is like from skeptic to true believer. So that's all I know about it, but it sounded pretty wild. So it sounded almost like something like the Da Vinci Code or one of those type of books. So sounded pretty neat and something that was definitely up our alley. Okay, now another thing we picked up that is another one I'm going to have to lay down to show you the inside of it a little bit better is The Sleeper and the Spindle by Neil Gaiman. This is illustrated by Chris Riddell, and this was published in 2013. I had never heard of this before, but this is a illustrated, dark retelling of Sleeping Beauty. They did this really cool thing with the translucent covers, both on the front and the back, and a lot of really cool illustrations throughout. It's not quite a graphic novel level, of course, but you can see there's a lot of illustrations and really help immerse you in the story, I would imagine. So it looks really, really cool. I'm really looking forward to reading this one. Now, speaking of Neil Gaiman, we also picked up this graphic novel, The Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes. We actually have not read any Sandman, believe it or not, but we wanted to, and we were thinking about picking up some Sandman graphic novels soon, so it was pretty fortuitous that we found this one. And this originally came out in
in trade paperback form in 1991, but it was originally published in single issue with Sandman issues 1 through 8, again in 1988 and 89. It was illustrated by a few different people: Sam Keith, Mike Dringenberg, and Malcolm Jones III. You can see, obviously, it's the older style of graphics, but looks pretty cool. Really cool. I'm really looking forward to getting into this. It looks nice and creepy.
Okay, the next one we picked up is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. We probably should have read this by now. Everybody knows this one. It's been made into a movie. But this is, I actually don't know all that much about it, except I know it's about a young boy whose mother is dying, and he gets visited by a unconventional monster, and told a few stories throughout the night, which I think relates to him coping with his dying mother. And supposedly it's an incredible, very moving story, and so it's high time I read it and learned a little more about it. So. Okay, another one we picked up that we've heard a bit about is Night by Elie Weisel. And this was originally published back in the early 70s, but this was redone it was a new translation by his wife about 15 years ago. And this is his recounting of, when he and his family were taken away in the middle of the night and brought to Auschwitz, and he recounts, I guess, the loss of the death of his family and the death of his innocence, and all the hardships that he encounters being a captive in concentration camps. So this is something that we've wanted we've heard about before and wanted to pick up for a while, and then we saw it at the fair, so we grabbed it. Okay, and then we picked up Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. This is a bestseller that was published 2016 by HarperCollins. And so this is a bestseller, and I've heard of it, and supposedly it's a big thing, but I don't know too much about it. It's, as it says on the cover, a memoir of a family and culture in crisis. And this is about, it's about he's recounting, his family moved from the Appalachian area of Kentucky to Ohio to try to escape poverty and live a more middle-class life. And this is a story about really what happens in those situations of upward mobility and the inability to actually truly escape from that life of abuse and alcoholism and poverty. And so it's apparently pretty acclaimed commentary on that, and so I figured I'm probably not going to read it urgently, but it is something that I'm interested in reading, so we picked this up, hoping that we'll get to it in the near future. So we don't really talk about it much on the channel, but we do read a lot of comics as well. And so at the fair, they did have a table with some boxes of individual issue comics in it. So we went through that, and we did pick up a bunch that we were interested for different reasons. So I'll just go through those real quick for anybody that's interested.
A lot of DC, Green Lantern, because I only had this in trade paperback form. Number Teen Titans, these are Jeff Johns, which I haven't read, and you can never go wrong with Jeff Johns. And some from the Brightest, right before the new 52 came out, The Brightest Day, Blackest Night. I only have these in trade paperback form, so there was a number of single issues, so I don't have any of these, so I grabbed these. Just an old Spider-Girl comic. I love the X-Men. I have a lot of X-Men stuff, but there's so much that I don't have, so these are some newer ones that I didn't have. A couple issues 1 and 2 of X-Men, and more X-Men, Children of the Atom. Issues 1 through 6, I think, yeah. Then some, back to DC, some Justice League. This was right after the new 52 came out, and each issue of the Justice League had like a number of different variants, and these were ones that I not sure if I had these versions. Lenticular cover of Ocean Master, that I don't think I had already. And a couple number ones when the New 52 first came out, Savage Hawkman, Detective Comics, and then back a couple Marvels here, the Silver Surfer number one when that was rebooted by Dan Slott. Black Panther, this is when Chadwick Boseman passed. And then I wanted to read the King in Black Venom stories, and this was a number of tie-ins. They had just random issues of a number of tie-ins there. That so I picked these up. A bunch of Planet of the Symbiotes, Gwenom vs. Carnage, a few issues of that, and King in Black Handbook. So that was it for the comics.
Okay, so that's everything we got at the used winter book fair. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so that you get notified the next time Olive says it's okay to upload another video. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.